invasive species are the #1 threat to our biodiversity. So what seems to be the strange thing though is there are other invasive species like wild boars or zebra mussels, yet I don't think any of you would say, I'm not going to rinse my boat because it's not the zebra mussel's fault that they're an invasive species. But that's how people seem to feel when it comes to house sparrows. Yes, they are a bird, they're a handsome bird, they are native to other places in the world, so you might be from somewhere that they are a native species, but here they're not. So the best thing you can do is not feed them, so I'm going to show you some ways that I stop house sparrows from using my bird feeders. Something that you're probably having an issue with is house sparrows eating your suet. Now the thing is, house sparrows don't really want the suet, they want the extra stuff that's in the suet like corn, oats, millet, nuts, so they want all of those things. Now a really easy way is to take a suet cage, which is probably the least expensive bird feeder you can buy, and instead of using the string that it comes with, use a little carabiner and so it hangs at a slant. House sparrows are not particularly graceful birds, so they can hang on momentarily, but they can't hold on to get a good meal. But these are really big holes, so what you need to do is take your regular suet cage, your regular suet, don't take it out of the plastic. You're going to take one of these little grids, it's just cut from metal that I bought at the hardware store. I just use wire cutters, that goes inside. You close it up, and I use a little piece of wire just to make sure it stays shut. Now, when it's hanging at an angle, there's not going to be able to be house sparrows landing on the back of it and eating through the back. They're going to have to be able to cling to the bottom. Since they can only do that for a short amount of time, now all of a sudden they have to get food through this little tiny grid. Now, downy woodpeckers, nuthatches, and chickadees and northern flickers have no trouble doing that. So once you have that grid on for 2 or 3 weeks, and the house sparrows have completely given up on, this is a very nutty suet that also has corn and millet in it, but once they've given up, then you can open it back out, take out the grid, and still hang it on a slant, and they'll give up. This is also going to stop magpies from eating from your suet. Bigger woodpeckers like northern flickers and pileated woodpeckers don't love to go all the way upside down. I actually find that none of the birds love to go all the way upside down for suet, so that's why I hang it at a slant. But if you only have 100% plain suet in your suet feeder, you can hang it out in the open and the house sparrows and the magpies won't go near it. Now, this is the tricky part. If you had a suet feeder that you had some sort of suet blend in, magpies and house sparrows are eating from it, you're not going to just replace the suet with plain suet. You're going to want to either get a new feeder and hang it in a new spot. That's going to be your best bet, because if you just put regular suet in where they were already eating from, they're going to keep trying, even if they don't like it, until you bring their old suet back. So to save yourself that grief, you can get a new feeder. It doesn't have to be expensive, it can just be a suet cage. You can boil clean your feeder to get any smell at all of the old suet off, but hang it in a new spot. I'm putting this one in. I can't explain it. There's no sparrow deterrence on it. The only thing I can come up with is that it's gold. I bought these off Amazon. I made my own little seed ball mix in here. It's sunflower seed, walnut, and pecans. This is just hanging out in the open. There's been a camera on it for about 3 months. House sparrows and magpies have not gone near it. It's at a spot where squirrels can't access it, so even though squirrels could realistically get through these big holes, it's hanging off the garage, so there's nowhere for the squirrels to get to. But I don't know why this one works, but it does. I saw some people were posting on Instagram this really cute little suet ball feeder, but the only problem was in all the videos, house sparrows were eating from it. So I thought, you know, I want a cute little suet ball feeder, but how can I stop house sparrows from eating from this? So what I did is I took this little hobby wire and I wove it in and out of all the little spaces. I thought a bird landed by me for a second there. Oh, there it goes. So I took the hobby wire and I wove it in and out of these bigger spaces. Because the thing about anything that's hanging that has a space underneath is that they're easily going to be able to fly up and hover and just jam their beak at it and get any little piece they can. But now that there's little wires, basically this feeder now has braces, and they have to be able to hold on, get their beak through that teeny tiny hole, which the nuthatches, chickadees, downy woodpecker, northern flickers have had no problems getting in here, but the house sparrows and magpies do. So this has again been out for about 3 months with a camera on it, with no house sparrows, no magpies, and again hanging off the garage, so no squirrels eating from it. Okay, but what about loose seed? That is what you're wondering. So in this I have shelled sunflower. It is the coarse grind, so that means that the sunflower seeds are about the same size as if they came immediately out of the shell, not crushed up like they would be for other feeders. But what you have to do is not fill this up. I only have a tiny bit of seed in here. It could also be black oil sunflower with the shell still on. And what that forces the birds to do when it's shaped like this with a rounded bottom is they have to hang on underneath. Now, house sparrows can do that for a second or two, but not enough to actually swarm your feeders, camp out there, or monopolize your feeders. So yes, they might get the occasional seed, but this is a great way to offer loose seed without having a flock of house sparrows sitting in your backyard. Living in the city can be hard because once an invasive species rolls in, you can't get rid of them completely. You can only manage it. If everyone did their small part at managing our really big invasive species problem, we would have a thriving native bird population. Now, for my own selfish reasons, I love to see birds in my backyard. If you have a flock of house sparrows sitting there, you're not going to have a variety of species visiting you. Most birds who are going to come to your yard don't even want a bird feeder. They want habitat. They want fresh water. They want native plants. They want trees and shrubs. So if you're doing all of these things and also not catering to house sparrows, you're going to have a huge amount of species. In 2022, I had 79 bird species visit my backyard, and I do not feed house sparrows. When you're not feeding house sparrows, it also means there's some other species you're not going to be able to feed as well. But they still come because I provided habitat for them. So remember that, just because you're not offering a tray feeder or a hopper feeder or something that's easy for big birds to come through. I've got blue jays every day. I don't put peanuts out for them. They come for the trees, they come for the water. So keep that in mind when you are putting out food for birds, that you're always doing what's best for native birds, and that's not feeding house sparrows. If you want to see more videos, you can hit the subscribe button and get an email the next time I do one, and you can follow me on Instagram.